Oh, my nose is itchy. Why does this always happen? Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is about livery yards and what I consider to be the most important factors to take into consideration when choosing a livery yard for the ponio. I first had the idea for this video back in April time when I myself was in the market for a new livery yard. I was moving home and I wanted to try and look for a yard that was a bit closer by so I wouldn't have to spend so much of my time kind of commuting back and forth to the yard. So yeah, between everything I just never got a chance to film it back then, but I kind of think that January is sort of a time for change and 2022 might be time for change for people. So yeah, I just thought I'd make a video and hopefully these tips will help you, because I definitely knew a lot more the second time around looking for a livery yard than I did the first time. So I'll just get straight into it. The first thing I would think about is what type of livery service you are after. So in Ireland there's typically two types of livery, DIY and full livery. So DIY is essentially where you're just renting the stable, all the care, mucking out, turning your horse out, you have to provide your own bedding, you have to provide your own hay, that's all kind of, it's all on you. So basically there's kind of no care for your horse apart from the stable that you rent, and then you are just like responsible, you're their sole caretaker. So there is a significant time commitment required with that, like you have to be at the yard like twice a day to do your horse, unless you kind of are lucky enough to have some kind of sharing kind of system set up or something. And then full livery, which is basically, it's all I personally have experience with. I've only ever kept Ruby on full livery. So that is when you get your stable, but you also get bedding, hay, they muck out for you, they turn your horse out, they bring them in, they feed them. So essentially all you have to do is turn up and ride and exercise your horse. So there's pros and cons to both. So the pros of DIY livery are that it is a lot more, it's a lot cheaper. You know, if money is an issue or you kind of are looking at ways that you can save money and you also have the time to do your horse yourself, then DIY livery could be a good option. The second thing is you get to do, like, you get to spend more time with your horse, and you get to do all the kind of caretaking, which to some people might be a disadvantage or a con, but by doing it all yourself, you know it's done properly, and if you're a bit of a control freak or you like things done a certain way, this is a good way for you to ensure that it is always done to your standard because you're the one doing it. So yeah, those are probably the two biggest pros of DIY. Another pro I suppose would be that you're going to be kind of quicker maybe to notice if your horse seems a bit off or there's something not quite right, because obviously people just pay attention to their own horses. Like, no one is going to give your horse as much attention as you do or pay as much attention to them as you do. So if you're there every day, twice a day doing them, you're going to notice pretty quickly if something is wrong. That's not to say if you're on a full livery that wouldn't be the case, but I just think it might be, you know, different staff on and stuff, like it could be, things could get missed. So but obviously if you're doing your horse every single day, you're going to notice immediately if something's wrong, or if they didn't finish their feed, or if they seem a bit off, or they're kind of, you know, their stable didn't have, like, they're showing signs of colic or something. So yeah, that's probably another pro of DIY. So the major con with DIY is obviously the time commitment and how much time you have to give to taking care of your horse. It's, you know, you have to be there twice a day, they have to be done, like you can't just leave them, or you can't just, like, the alarm goes off, you can't just say, alright, I'm going to have a lie in, or I'm not going to go today. Like, you do need to go every day. And yeah, so I guess that probably is actually the biggest disadvantage to DIY, is probably the time commitment. Full livery is great, you just need to kind of turn up and ride. So the disadvantages are that it is more expensive. You don't get to spend as much time doing those caretaking jobs if you actually enjoy doing them, which I do, but I wouldn't be able to commit to doing them every day. But the advantage is obviously that you get a lot of your time back, and you can, you have a lot more flexibility. It is good if you're work or you don't know if you can definitely commit to being somewhere twice a day. And yeah, like that's the main kind of advantages of full livery. So I myself, as much as I enjoy doing yard jobs and taking care of Ruby, I definitely couldn't commit to being there twice a day to do her. I just don't think she'd have a great routine. Even though my job is kind of technically 9 to 5, like I can end up working overtime. I know when I actually had to, pre-COVID, when I had to commute into the city, I could have ended up working much later than 5 o'clock and getting a really late train home and stuff. So I wouldn't want Ruby depending on me when I could be a bit all over the place. I'd much rather her have a structure in place and she gets done the same time every single day. The next kind of thing to consider would be facilities. And I would suggest, in terms of facilities, for you to have a kind of list and do a ranking system and start at number 1, which will be kind of must have, and then maybe down to 4 or 5, whatever number, and they, as they descend in order to it kind of being like, oh, nice to have but not essential. So for me, my number 1 was it for a livery yard to have good arenas. I like arenas, and I just feel like if we didn't have the arena, we would never do any schooling, or there wouldn't be any kind of structure. So to me, it was really important that whatever yard I went to had an arena with a good surface. And then second on my list was hacking, or some kind of place that we could hack. I love hacking. I love kind of just going out for a potter and a mooch around. And this is probably where, like, the yard I'm at now, probably, like, there isn't as much hacking as there was in my previous yard, but in fairness, I think we were just spoiled in that previous yard because there was so much hacking, like 200 acres, and this yard is a little bit smaller. But there's another thing that I more than makes up for the lack of hacking, which I will get to later in the video. But yeah, so number 1 for me was arenas, number 2 hacking, number 3 was kind of just a nice kind of stable, sort of nice atmosphere, kind of clean, airy, just for it to kind of look well maintained. And this is more just for Ruby, and it kind of gives me assurance that there is a good standard of care there. And so those are my kind of top 3 criteria for a livery yard. This might be different depending on what you do with your horse. If you're really into cross country, you might not be fussed about arenas, but you really want there to be a cross country course. If you're really into, like some people would have like gallops as number 1, or an indoor arena. So it depends on what you want and what your kind of needs are and what you enjoy doing with your horse. So ideally the facility should reflect kind of what you enjoy doing with your horse. So the third thing I would consider is basically the care. Like, I'm not kind of, these aren't in order, like obviously it's a whole package, so if there's something missing in the care, then it doesn't matter what facilities they have, like it's going to be a kind of no deal. And for me, a big one here is turnout time. I love Ruby to have as much turnout as possible. I just think it's brilliant for all horses. Every horse is different, of course, like some horses are laminitic and they can't be out in grass for too much or whatever, but I still do think all horses benefit from having a large area to roam around and to just constantly be moving. Horses aren't designed to be stabled or to be stood still for long periods of time. That is kind of something artificial that we've sort of imposed on them, and they do adapt quite well to it, but still, like, I would, in the interest of all them living their best lives, I would love all horses to get out as much as possible. Especially for Ruby, who's exhibiting some arthritic changes in her hocks. I want to kind of maintain this as the best I can and prevent it from getting worse. So one of the ways that I can do this is by ensuring that she gets out as much as possible. So in the yard she's at now, they have a great turnout system, and this is honestly one of the main kind of selling points of the yard for me. It was really what sold me on it, was that they get out every single day. They go out at 8, and in the summertime they don't come in till 4:30 or 5 sometimes, and then in the winter time when it's a bit muddy and obviously the days are shorter, they come in around kind of 2-3 o'clock. So I just love that she gets that time out every single day. She loves her routine, she's happy out. Her stable has a window in it. Like, I just feel like she is just yeah, she just absolutely is flourishing in that kind of routine, and I'm just so happy, and I'm so happy that she is living her best life. Obviously you want to kind of think about feeding. Does your horse have any kind of requirements for supplements or medication? Are they willing to, you know, meet those requirements? What quality is the haylage? Does your horse have a special requirement for special type of bedding? Do they have like respiratory issues or whatever? Do they need kind of, you know, like special type of bedding? Is that facilitated? Are they willing to facilitate it? Etc, etc. Yeah, those would be some of the main kind of care aspects that you would need to kind of consider when choosing a livery yard. So like, you know, obviously if there's something lacking on the care side, then it doesn't matter, they could have the best facilities, but like I personally wouldn't go for anything that isn't meeting all the kind of care requirements, because that's, at the end of the day, that's the most important. So then the fourth thing is just kind of a general sort of, what's the yard like? Is it friendly? Is it busy? This comes down to personal preference. Some people love a busy yard where it's bustling and full of life and full of people. I personally myself like kind of a bit more of a quieter yard, less people. I just sort of find I'm a bit distracted. Maybe see it. I think I'm definitely an introvert, but I just kind of find I'm a bit distracted by people. So I definitely much prefer a quieter yard to ride in and to kind of do Ruby in. So yeah, that comes down to kind of a personal preference. Another huge one is actually location. But I kind of think this goes without saying, obviously you don't want to be driving miles and miles and miles or hours to get to the livery yard, because that's just not going to be feasible no matter how great the facilities are. So you want to make sure that it is ideally kind of somewhere, I would say a triangle between work, home and kind of the yard. Like that's kind of like, I would always try and have it like, you know, easy, or have them kind of all on the same route. At the end of the day, it is actually a huge decision where you put your horse, because it's somewhere that you spend a lot of your time and you want it to be enjoyable and want to look forward to actually going to spend time at the yard and to spend time with the ponio. So yeah, if you've got any factors that you kind of think are important to take into consideration when choosing a livery yard, please write them below. But yeah, I hope this helped, and I'll chat to you in my next one. Bye!